Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. It's Gav aka BEYTEK here, and today we're finally back. We've finally got another video on YouTube, and this one's actually going to be of sticking the RX-7's engine back together again, and its first startup after the destruction of the last engine. So we'll just get straight into it. Here we are. This is me testing out my new homemade block fill. It's got some special ingredients in it. I'm not going to disclose that, but I have used it in a few engines now and it's working an absolute dream. So here's me just in the parts washer, heaps of diesel, cleaning all my bits down, and decided to set up the block. Get this thing done first because this block fill takes, quite a while to dry actually. It takes around about nearly a week to fully harden. So I was just levelling out the block there. You need to make sure it's nice and level so this stuff settles nice and level. I've actually made mine around about 20mm deep, and as you can see with the holes drilled for the gasket, it flows quite nicely. So these parts here, I'm just showing you the grooves in the block for my O-rings. Again, this is all homemade BEYTEK stuff here. I can do this all in house now, and offering it a bit of a service. And at this point I gave the block a little bit of a hone. This is to freshen it up again because I've got new pistons, new rings, and we want everything to seal nice and to give this engine the best chance it's got of survival. So as you can see, I clean this out. I clean this out about 5 times before I'm ready to start sticking these things back together again. The pistons I'm actually using here are actually Trom Outlaw pistons. Now these things are like rated for 50 psi boost, like well over 1000 horsepower, so these things are going to do my build an absolute treat. This is the point now when I lay out all my piston rings and start working on the piston ring gap. I've left this engine quite slack as well, to be honest. I go for the upper end of the clearances. Yes, you might get a little bit more blow by, but like I say, when you start making big power, pistons and rings swell massively, and if one of these piston rings was to swell enough, you're nipping that piston in the bore and you'll kick a rod. As simple as that. So I'm just going over here with my little feeler gauge after I clearanced it in the grinder. Yeah, I'm using a grinder. It's not the most accurate, but as you can see here, like, it's quite accurate. I've done that many now. I've got the thing pretty much on par. Like, look at that clearances. It holds the feeler gauge itself. So I just stack the rings like this so they're in place, and you can see here I've made a little bolt stretch gauge for doing your ARP bolts. I believe in stretching the bolts. I end up around about 70 Newton meters of torque on these bolts to get a good stretch, and they're ideally meant to be stretched. So and that's what I've done. Here's a wee tip I do here. I put a little bevel just on these rods, both sides, just so when you're sliding the bearings in, they don't catch on the back end and cause bearing material to stick behind the bearing, which can, mess up all your clearances and stuff like that. So I put a nice little edge on there. This doesn't affect it, by the way, in any way. And I put the button caps of these pistons on. They don't use circlips or C-pins or nothing like that. They use a button, and the actual ring itself keeps them in place. I'm absolutely buzzing to be using these Trom pistons. Like, they look absolutely beautiful. And here we have it. The engine is now back together again. Spinning over really smooth. I was loving this. It was feeling really good. You'll just get a feel for this sort of stuff. And my block fill's looking sick in the thing as well. Now that the block's all together, decided to stick it in the car. I like to put the head on separately. I mean, I can work around this thing as it is. And at this point here, decided to make a little spacer. I make this spacer out of a bit of steel, and it's just to hold the crank gear against the crank. Because, yeah, believe it or not, I actually weld my timing gear to my crank. It's just so it doesn't shear that pin. It's as simple as that. There's a timing pin at the back there that can break, and I have broken them before. Obviously my sump was dead, so I had to weld in a new sump baffle. And yeah, just looking over some of these old parts, check the neck of these valves. They've bent big time, and like I say, these are stock valves. None of the heads come off them, so I was happy to use stock valves again to stick them in this new head. This is a K24 head, an RBB K24 head I'm using this time. Now that came with a bit of challenges because obviously the coolant ports and the outlet and stuff are slightly different. So yeah, I just decided to go with a K24 head because I have a couple. Now springs and retainers are in. She's looking good. She's ready to rock. I've now got my copper O-rings, which, yep, I use house wire for this, just 1mm stuff, solid copper wire that I tap into place into the block. This time round I actually decided to use an L-ring head gasket. They're used in the Volkswagen world for massive boosts, so I thought I'll just give it a try. I've never seen anyone else use one, so you know, we'll give it a bash. A bash for the old YouTube, see how we get on. So first setup here was 60, 100 Newton meters, and I'm pretty sure I ended up torquing these inline pro head studs down to 140 Newton meters. Yeah, there we go, 100 foot-pounds, 140 Newton meters. So here, working on the coolant passages here, I had to use this adapter because otherwise I was going to go into my bulkhead. But obviously I had to make up new coolant pipes for this because originally it came out the front of the head like the K24, and yeah, so we're just measuring things up, extend that a little bit. It was only needing, I think, maybe 2 inches or so, as you can see here. Just simple little jobs, tack that all together again and weld it up. I actually think welded aluminium is my favourite metal to weld up. So here we have the engine looking very much together now. We've got our coolant lines together, fuel lines on, inlet manifold on. It's coming together fast now, you've got to admit. And the next point from here was going to do the exhaust manifold and get that stuck on. And then when that was all on, it was just a final wee check over some bits and bobs, some turbo lines, you know, get the coil packs and everything back on again. All this stuff is all the same. You know, I didn't do any changes here, still going compound turbo. And at this point, it's time to start topping it up. At this point here, though, I'm going to stop talking. I hope you enjoyed this video and listen to these next couple of clips. Boys, we've got our empty cup there for oil. Let's let it run a little bit longer this time, see if it actually builds oil pressure. Fucking hell, that built up fast. Oh, geez. Well, that's always a good sign. That's always a good sign.